Alright guys, welcome back. In today's video, we are pretty much going to be reacting to Rogersbase prediction on Oda's master plan. Now, if you guys don't know, just one second, the camera's acting up a bit. If you guys don't know already, I've probably said it in some of my reaction streams to One Piece and everything, but pretty much I've been watching One Piece for about 20 years, and as a 20-year One Piece fan, I've pretty much kind of gotten the gist of how the series goes and things that I think will happen. But I think it really is cool that Rogers Base ended up making a video on the fact that he's predicting how the end of One Piece will go. Um, yeah, so today's video, we're pretty much going to be getting into what will be actually happening at the end and what he thinks, and then I'm going to break it down and kind of give you guys some of my thoughts on how I think the actual story will end too. If you're new here, please be sure to like, subscribe, and then also comment down below if you have any of your own thoughts. We're pretty much going to be hopping in right here to Rogers Base's video, so let me just go right in. We'll get this all set up here. Let's see something real quick.
A lot of the theories that
Hold on one second, guys. 1 second. Gotta set the source for it. Put that right to there. Okay. Probably just go full screen with it. We don't even really need the image over. So we're pretty much going right from here, and we're gonna be reacting to what he thinks will actually happen. Just keep in mind that I have been watching One Piece for about 20 years, so I'm interested to kind of give you guys my thoughts on what may happen versus what Roger will be predicting. So without further ado, let's hop into the video, and here we go.
I've had about the end of the series. There's going to be a lot of fun stuff in this. We're basically going to be going over what I think we're going to see in One Piece before the end of the series. And I do mean pretty much everything. I'm going to be going over all the major arcs that I think we're going to see before the end of the series, all of Oda's different plans, things that he's talked about in regards to the end of One Piece, and how I think that's going to relate to some of the upcoming story arcs, all that good stuff. So sit back, relax, get yourself a cup of coffee. This is going to be a lot of fun, and we're going to get started charting Oda's course to Laugh Tale. Now, the first thing we got to talk about right at the very beginning of this, if we're talking about the end of One Piece, is just when do I think One Piece will end? And the answer to this is very simple. The answer to this is never. One Piece will never end. It's going to live on in our hearts forever. But in actuality, I think it's actually going to end in late summer 2027 at the earliest. Okay, I don't think it's going to end before summer 2027, but I do think there is a likelihood in which we could see the series ending by this point. But again,
okay, now I'm gonna pause it right there just because I feel like with Oda saying it's gonna end by 2027, I mean, it's possible, but at the same time, I just want you guys to keep in mind that we've pretty much ended up being in this One Piece journey for what I have for over 20 years. And with everything Oda has going on now and everything that's been revealed as of chapter 1114, I feel like that timeline's probably going to get stretched because I mean, obviously Roger knows this, but there's certain things like we have the One Piece live action continuing now. That's going on. With Studio Wit doing their things, I'm pretty sure he might have a little supervision of that. And then there's just a couple things in general that I think Oda's going to have to get through before it actually ends. So with that in mind, I kind of see things going maybe a little bit longer than 2027, but I wouldn't put it past Oda to, okay, if he can't hit the 30-year mark by hitting in 2027, he's probably going to go for 35. And that would still work because it kind of gives this little neat, like, anniversary date to the series and still lets it run for its, estimated time, which is pretty cool. But at the end of the day, I just don't think that we're just going to end up going straight based off of what he said, because I mean, even people like King of Lightning have theorized that like he's pretty much gonna end up ending the video or ending One Piece. Sorry, I said the video. Ending One Piece when things actually kind of make a little bit more sense. So like with him having all that going on, like the live action, the manga, and all that, and then trying to get through all that while also putting things in the series like these new lore drops we got, such as the Mother Flame, things with the thousand year, or not the thousand year, the Void Century, and then everything else in between. I feel like we're probably going to extend a little bit farther than 2027. Um, I'd say 2032 sounds like a safe spot. That's just because then he won't have to rush. And on top of that, it makes it so he can still end up getting everything he wants within the series while also, keeping everything nice and flow. So he basically can make the flow of One Piece go without making it feel too rushed after doing it for so long. And then also he can make sure that everything else that gets done, like projects, lore, etc., still gets handled.
I put estimated minimum because I really do think there is absolutely, positively no way we don't get to summer 2027, considering all the major milestones that are going to happen that year. Now, you might be asking, okay, what are these major milestones? What do you think is going to happen in 2027? Well, I'm glad you asked. Over here, why 2027? Well, first and foremost, One Piece manga's 30th anniversary is going to be summer 2027. Specifically, Chapter 1 released officially.
By the way, I just want to say I looked at this video and it's an hour 59. I will do my best to kind of cut through some things because I do know there's going to be parts where he's obviously going to give his explanations, and that's fine. But for the purpose of this video, we're going to be kind of going through things a little bit more succinctly. So every time he makes like a good point based on his summary, we'll be kind of skipping ahead just to kind of get through the explanations. Then I'll give you my thoughts.
On July 19th, 1997. So again, I feel like July 19th, 2027 is absolutely going to be, especially considering it's a Monday, which is when the chapters officially release in Japan. That's going to be a One Piece chapter release date. I actually even think I know the exact chapter that's going to come out on that date. I think it's going to be chapter 1200. We had the first 600 chapters of the series. I think we're going to get the second 600 chapters of the series. I think it's going to be a big reveal. I do think, again,
Makes
we'll
sense.
probably end up getting chapters past that point, but I really do think chapter 1200 is going to line up directly with July 19th, 2027, especially when you take into consideration breaks and a lot of other stuff that we're going to be diving into a little bit later. Now,
Fair enough. Fair
keep
enough.
in mind, 2027 is also the estimated release of One Piece manga volume 120. Considering the rate we're going right now, which is like 3 or 4 volumes per year, we're probably going to hit 120, which again is the exact second half mark of One Piece in 2027. You had the first 60 volumes pre-time skip, the second 60 volumes post-time skip. That would be a nice little bookend to the series. But again, I do think we could, in fact, we probably will get past that point. But I do think volume 120 will be very, very near the end, or we will have some massive revelation in volume 120. And the last thing that's happening in 2027 is the estimated release, once again, of One Piece chapter 1200. Now, if you don't take any breaks into consideration at all, which is obviously silly because when I wrote this, we've already had 2 breaks since, and there's another one coming up, and it's Golden Week right now when I'm recording this on YouTube. So again, there's always breaks. Oda's going to have breaks. There's going to be holiday breaks. There's going to be breaks. But again, if you did not take breaks into consideration, if you just assumed that every single Sunday from now until chapter 1200 there would be a release, we would get there in summer 2026. So again, take the breaks into consideration. All right, we're going to talk a little bit more about this though. Let's move on. Another thing, all right, Oda is notorious for giving incorrect estimations, but
okay, now see, this is exactly what I was saying earlier, where I do feel like the incorrect estimation will be what it is. Now let's read right here. It says each year Oda is notorious for giving incorrect estimations, but Wano ending in the manga of 2022 lines up perfectly with the 30th anniversary in 2027, and a solid 3 years worth of chapters would estimate to 5 years if Oda's breaks are taken into consideration. Hold on, let's read what also Shonen Jump says in the latest Ichiro x Gosho Aoyama interview. Oda reiterates One Piece is scheduled to end in 5 years and has the ending of the series completely planned. Still, he also tells Aoyama his personal goal would be for the series to end in a total of 3 years. See, now I'll say this. I feel like Oda should, like, if this tweet here is true, I feel like we should take into mind that, like, I don't think Oda should try to rush it. Like, yeah, he'd want it to end in a total of 3 years, that's fine. But I think we also need to keep in mind that, like, this has been such a good series that it's like I would just ask Oda one thing: please don't rush it. You know what I mean? We have a completely good series. Everything's going good. There's so much lore to know, and that's gonna be handled here. If it did end in 3, I guess I wouldn't be the I couldn't complain no matter what Oda does. It's his series. He made it. And on top of that, we all enjoy it, which is cool. But at the same time, it's like I think that like for Oda to try to rush it any farther than 5 years, like it could lead to some potential like mm, low parts of the series, like where things could have been better and then they weren't. And I don't want him to regret that. And I also don't want the fans to like kind of have this like, turned upside down expectation of One Piece all of a sudden if things do get rushed. Now also guys, from here I'm also gonna skip ahead. We're actually gonna go. We're gonna look at like different slides real quick. So okay, let's see here. Okay, so it looks like right here we have Roger breaking down all the loose ends. I'm gonna let him continue on a bit. Let's see if we can try to nail this a little bit closer to when the slide begins. So we're gonna go back about 20, 30. So it's gonna be a little bit back. Alright. First off, let's read this. There's no way that Oda can wrap up everything by then. There are too many loose ends and things left unexplained. This is actually a big fact. I give Roger credit if he made this slide because there's even more probably than we're gonna read here, but we're gonna go through them and let him just explain it real quick.
Admirals over here going chop tomate. Absolutely not. There are too many loose ends and things left unexplained in the series, right? I mean, take a look at this chart. Look at all this stuff we got to get through still. Look at all these loose ends. Laugh-Tale, Rox D. Zebek, Zoro versus Mihawk, the fight with Akainu, the Revolutionary Army versus the World Government, the Moon, Eneru, the God Valley flashback, the Will of Defo reveal, Emu's fight, the Straw Hat Grand Fleet big moment that was teased a long time ago, Shanks, potentially the Davy back coming back, Crocodile's secret with Ivankov, the Blackbeard Pirates, Uruj showing up in a main arc, Loki and Big Mom, the Emerald City, potentially. I actually want to write that off immediately. We'll talk about that one in a little bit because that's the only one that I don't touch on. Versus the Cross Guild. Everything. The Final Road Poneglyph. You can read this whole list for yourself. But again, there's so much that we have to get through before the end of the series. It seems nearly impossible to wrap up all of this in about 3 arcs leading up to the 30th anniversary in 2027. Right? Well, I actually think there is a way that Oda can do it. There's a lot of overlapping things here. When you take a look at some of these things and how they connect with the stories that are coming up at large, I do feel genuinely that there is a possibility that all of this stuff could be wrapped up in 3 more arcs. Now again, 3 more arcs, considering the fact that Egghead has been super long as it is, 3 more arcs could take us well beyond 2027. But I do think that people also underestimate just how long certain story arcs are. And because now we're getting all this world building and all this other information that's happened in, Egghead and Wano and all these other really long story arcs, things that needed to be set up beforehand, you got to remember, now we're getting to the good stuff. If you're getting to those final arcs, it's not going to be discovering things. We're going to have things discovered by that point. I mean, even looking into the future, obviously we're not going to be talking about any spoilers or any leaked chapters or anything like that. I just want to put that out there, by the way, because I know the early spoilers are out for the next chapter.
All right, so real quick, we're gonna stop him there because I did want to kind of go through this list with you guys. He kind of stopped. He stopped at the versus Cross Guild part, but let's read on real quick. And we have in this list we have Crocodile's Secret, Final Road Poneglyph, the Straw Hat Dreams, which that's a good one to add in there. The Straw Hat Dreams is one I was gonna say because there's that too. We have Adam and Eve trees, Destruction of Fishman Island versus the Holy Knights, the Throne War, Nefertari Lily. We have the Immortality Surgery, Ancient Weapons, Full Void Century, Joy Boy Flashback, the Final War, Elbath, Giant Straw Hat, Pirate King Luffy, What is the One Piece, and Current Impelled Down Prisoners. Now that is a pretty good list. I will say he definitely nailed it on the head when it comes to a lot of this. I just want to elaborate on the Straw Hat Dreams thing most of all because I feel like that's pretty significant in itself. Like, okay, in order for us to see everything come to fruition, we have to go back to the beginning of One Piece where we have the original dreams of the Straw Hats. So with Luffy, it's obviously to be the Pirate King. We kind of have to see that, and this is where like when Oda says the One Piece will end when they find the One Piece, it doesn't make sense to me because if you think about it, if Luffy goes and finds the One Piece, he will become the Pirate King, yes. But we obviously are going to want to see what that means, what that entails, and how that actually plays into the world of One Piece. Like, we know that everybody will recognize him as the Pirate King. That's cool. I'm not saying that will come with any perks or anything crazy will happen after the fact, but we want to see Luffy in some fashion, like, after he's found it, you know what I mean? Like after he's become the Pirate King, what does he do? Is there a next One Piece? Is there something that happens to him after he finds the One Piece and then somebody else tries to carry on this legacy? Things of that nature. Carrying back to the Straw Hat Dreams again, we have Zoro. That does tie into Zoro versus Mihawk, which is cool. I think after that he will kind of be good. The one thing I will say though that is still like it's just to me, this is like a thing I've had with One Piece since the very beginning, is like I know Queen is dead, and I know obviously that was a part of Zoro's past and all that, but I also just can't help but think there's gonna be some lore that we get about Zoro and Kuina that somehow brings maybe not her back, but brings her and what happened to her to a different layer. Like maybe we find out she didn't just fall down those stairs. So that's like another thing that I'm really big on, and I hope Oda kind of like maybe just gives us a little bit of context on, or even like throws in a little bit more of an explanation there, something, you know. We have Nami's dream of making a map of the world, which will happen when they find the One Piece. Essentially, I think that could be tied in right before the ending, which is cool. That kind of goes with Robin's dream too, of finding out about the past and being able to read all the poneglyphs. Chopper's dream, I don't know if that ties into the immortality surgery or not in a way, but I will say him having to find all the medicine is something. Usopp's dream is pretty self-explanatory. I feel like that'll be really like tied down and shown once we hit Elbaf. That sounds like something that can definitely happen there. Um, Sanji finding the all blue could be something that happens when the sea level rises. I'm not sure. I don't know if that'll happen as early as it does, or if it happens once we get closer to Laugh Tale. We'll have to see if anything. Who else? Brooks really just along for the ride. He's a riding musician. He does want to see Laboon. I think we'll end up seeing that at some point, which would be cool. Who else? We've got Frankie. Frankie pretty much has wanted to build the greatest ship, and I pretty much think he's done so with the Sunny. I don't know if there's anything else he would want to do further, unless maybe seeing the Adam and Eve tree somehow gives a boost to the Sunny. That would be cool. And then I think we forgetting anybody? I'm looking back at my Funko Pops because I'm thinking of all the Straw Hats in general, and it's like we have Luffy, Zoro, Nami, Sanji, Chopper, Brooke. I guess you could say Jinbei. Yeah, Jinbei's in there now too. I mean, Jinbei's again just another one that's along for the ride. He just pretty much wants to be there when Luffy becomes the Pirate King, and I mean, I'm guessing his main dream would be maybe that like the discrimination against the fishermen, it kind of blows over and people can live in harmony. That would be cool. So like I think with Jinbei, his dream is going to be pretty self-realized once everything comes together with the sea levels rising and everything, and I could see that happening. But the Straw Hats dreams are a big part of this to me because like we have to individually see these happen as everything else is happening. So things like versus Shanks, I mean, we're definitely going to see that. There's no way Shanks is just going to say I'm going for the One Piece and then obviously not fight Luffy for it or something. And also that would prove full circle that Luffy's a great pirate because he was able to beat Shanks. Um, the moon and Eneru, that's another big one for me. We definitely we don't have to go to the moon. I would love if Oda did that because I do want to go there. But I will say if Eneru doesn't come from the moon himself, I feel like we have to go to the moon once we hit Elbaf because that is going to be part of the series where we actually get to see things like what Eneru did. If there is truly a mother flame up there, like in the hieroglyphs and everything through the cover stories, maybe see it up there too. Maybe these mother flames could even be part of what made Joy Boy so powerful. Who knows? But in the end, I want to see like what Anaru did when he left for the moon, and that's been a big thing ever since Skypiea ended. So I was wondering this all the way back in like 2000 and like I think it was like 7 or 8 when we saw Anaru literally just ride away into the moon. So that is one thing that I definitely would love to see. There's other things too. I'm trying to think of a list, but I mean, Roger pretty much has it here. It's definitely a good list based on things that we need to wrap up before the series ends. And if Oda didn't wrap these things up, I mean, dude, nah, there's no way, man. We've been on this ride for 20 years. Even if people have to contact Oda directly through a PO box or some shit, it's not just gonna end like that. So, like at the end of the day, I just feel like we definitely have to see a lot of this wrap up. Um, I know it's not on here, but like I think it could be in the versus Shanks column. I would definitely love to see Usopp meet his father. We got a tease of that in the movie film Red, but at the same time, I want to see Usopp do something like he did back in Dressrosa, where he gets the ability of foresight with hockey, even though he wasn't able to fully use it, and then he's able to fully use it. Because if he's gonna go from the Davy back fight, or even from the Blackbeard fight to the Davy back fight, I feel like he's gonna need a serious power up because he's gonna be fighting the Blackbeard pirate sniper, and if he does that, that's gonna mean that he's gonna have to somehow like have the marksmanship better than him. And with that man being able to snipe people from almost an island away, we've seen it. There have been shots taken where like, well, I remember one episode. It was even an episode in a manga panel where like one of the pirates from Blackbeard's crew, the sniper, he literally ends up taking a shot from like probably like hundreds, if not thousands, I'd say hundreds of miles away, and it was a sniper shot. But to do that, his hockey had to be so ridiculous for that. It's like insane. And then now he's even got a devil fruit too. Like, I mean, come on. He can even warp and teleport. Usopp's gonna have to pull out some crazy stops to beat this guy. Crocodile Secret would be cool to see because we do have speculation that it used to be a woman because of him being with or knowing of Ivankov beforehand, which would be interesting. Um, and yeah, I mean, there's just a good couple things in here that I definitely would love to see before he wraps it up. But I think Rogersbase has a pretty good gist on everything that's going on here. Um, Trying to think if there's anything else that we want to see before. Well, obviously we have to deal with the sea level rising, so I don't know if the sea level rising is going to be in the midst of all this. The ancient weapons, yes, that's one thing. Obviously we have to learn about the past, which I mean that could relate to, I guess it could relate to anything on here, but like there's just like a thing with like the ancient kingdom. We might get the lore of that while Vegapunk's explaining stuff, possibly, but we have to. Oh, sorry. Ooh, I don't know what happened there. The yawn came on. I've been out all day. Anyways, we have the ancient kingdom, and we kind of have to get an idea of what that was. So a flashback of that, or maybe like some way to look back at how that was going down or what happened back then. And yeah, just basically a history on the lore of the actual world of One Piece. That's the main thing in general because we've already been teased so much about the Void Century that it's like, okay, now we actually need to know what happened when One Piece was going, like when people were trying to find it, or maybe how it was even made. So, what is the One Piece? That's actually very significant because we do need to know what it is, when it was made, who found it first, who even maybe even made it, and then on top of that, like when Luffy finds it, what does it have to do with the fact that the Roger Pirates said they found it, and then apparently they weren't able to, be in the right time, so they got there later. Maybe it's like they got to see a piece of the history, something like that. I don't know. I've seen Artur's theory where it's like it's a piece of sake. That sounds interesting and that would be kind of cool, but I don't think it's deep enough for the fact that like if Roger and them found it, then how do I say this? Like the only way that would make sense and be kind of funny, and this is just like a little wild string theory here, is if for some reason the One Piece was a piece of sake, like Artur said, and the bottle says don't open till X amount of years, and then they laugh because they spent the whole time trying to find this treasure, found that they couldn't even open the bottle yet, and then maybe that's what made the Rogers Pirates laugh, and they honored it enough not to open the bottle. Something silly like that, right? But that's a long shot, and I'm not gonna just say that's the main thing the One Piece is right off the bat. But let's continue on a little bit and see what Roger says. I'm gonna let him go on for a couple more minutes, and then we're gonna skip ahead to his arcs.
We're not going to be talking about that here. We're just going to be talking about the most recent chapter that came out this last Sunday. But again, like even if you look at what's been happening in Egghead Island with this stuff with the Void Century, Vegapunk mentioning that like the world is going to sink. There's a lot of stuff that's being set up literally right now that's probably going to give us answers to a lot of this. So we won't even necessarily need this when we go into some of these later arcs. So let me continue. Here we go. We have exactly 88 chapters until that fated One Piece chapter 1200 that we brought up earlier. Now, this was as of April 21st, which is right before I ended up doing this panel at C2E2. But obviously, there's been one more chapter.
All right, so I mean, I know he's doing all this, but let's see here. We don't really need to know how long a chapter is. Story sagas at a balance. Yeah, it's kind of uh it's a little bit too random for me with this list because like every chapter, every saga isn't just a finite amount. Like you see 100, 117, 85, 139, all those numbers are not similar at all. So I think like it's cool to see how many chapters each saga was, but that doesn't give us more of a rough estimation as to how many chapters a saga can be versus like, Oda might have been like in one saga better than another and, kind of just made it long as much as he wanted. So this I feel like is cool, but at the same time, like the amount of chapters within a saga, it it can be an indicator, but it's not going to be something that actually makes everything like set in stone. Like Egghead, I don't know how many chapters that is so far. I believe it's about like 100 or so, maybe somewhere around there. But at the same time, I mean, right now, I just feel like we in general are probably just going to go about each saga based on how long Oda wants to do it. Like, I won't say Elbaf will be short, but I will say if it was over 100 chapters, I mean, there's no way that we're hitting by 2027 then, because 100 extra chapters on top of finishing Egghead, nah, he may as well shoot for the 40-year anniversary. So, let's see here. He does a trivia time. That was pretty cool. You guys should definitely go check out his video if you want to participate in that. It was for the live, but it's still pretty cool to just set like your knowledge on it. But from here, we're gonna jump to his LBAF prediction. I think this is gonna be interesting because a lot of people, including myself, think that this is where we're going right after Egghead. But with running into the Giants, of course you would not think we're going to LBAF next. I mean, Dory and Brogy are right there, ready to pick them up. So it's like, where else would they go? So I think they're probably going to split up and head to Elbaf, and that's where we're going to see a lot of things, such as like the picture shows here, with the moon, Shanks, and then I guess Usopp. The one thing I will say though is I don't particularly think we're gonna get Shanks at Elbaf. I think it would be cool, but I think there is a thing here where we're probably gonna get more of the Giants in the lore of One Piece, and Shanks is probably gonna be waiting at the end. Because if Shanks was already at Elbaf, and that was back when he creamed the shit out of freaking Kid and everything, then like I mean really from here it's like Shanks is probably already gone off getting close as he can to the One Piece. Maybe he's waiting for Luffy to get closer so he can kind of rob him of it last minute or something of the sort, or try to anyways. But like I think that Shanks isn't really going to be a part of Elbaf, even though we saw him there. He's probably already set out to try to get closer to the One Piece, and then he'll either be waiting for Luffy, or him and Luffy will meet at a certain point trying to get to the One Piece or Laugh Tale, and then they'll clash.
Going to see before the end of the final saga. This is a very obvious one. This is one that I feel like everybody's talking about. They've already directly referenced this in the story. Like, we're going here next. There's not a question, and that is the Elbaf arc. Now, what I did, as you'll notice, is I put a lot of stuff together on this image. Now, some of you eagle-eyed viewers might notice a couple things. We're going to be talking about a lot of stuff in regards to the Elbaf arc. But before we dive a little bit deeper into it, I do want to go over some of the talking points of things that I specifically think we are going to see during this story arc. So, here we go. First off, Elbaf speculation. The first thing I think that's very obvious to expect when looking at what the Elbaf arc is going to entail is there's going to be a lot of Norse mythology, a lot of Viking stuff, and a lot of sun god lore. Again,
Of course.
worship the sun god. We saw this in Big Mom's flashback. This was reiterated again recently with the sun shield from Dory and Brogy and Egghead Island. This has been talked about time and time and time again. All right, we are going to get Sun God Lord here. In fact, I think a lot of Sun God lore is probably coming up in Egghead Island as well, considering we've got, Vegapunk talking about how the world is going to sink. I'm assuming he's probably going to tell us something about the Void Century, something about the Sun God. But again, there will be even more Sun God related lore within Elbaf. And one of the big things that I think is going to be talked about in terms of Elbaf and the Sun God is what was up with the giant straw hat in Marijoa. We've got an arc entailing characters that are literally giants who worshipped a sun god. One would believe, and after what we've seen of Luffy so far, utilizing his Nika powers and becoming massive and grabbing Kizaru, I would not be surprised if Joy Boy in some way was a giant or seen as a giant by the giants of Elbaf. And
okay. Okay, I'm gonna let him go on there because like we're gonna take a second. So we're gonna go through this list. I know he's explaining things, but again, guys, I don't want this video to be a full 2 hours because I just don't think anybody's gonna watch that. But especially when you could just go watch Roger's actual video. But we're gonna kind of go through the list here. So we have the Norse mythology and sun god lore, which of course we have the giant straw hat explained, which I would love that. But that did look like it was more in Mary Joa, so I can't say for sure that that's going to be explained within Elbaf. It would be cool, but I definitely don't know about that. We have Loki, the Prince of Elbaf. That'll be cool. I can definitely see that. Usopp and Shanks roles. I think it'll be more Usopp. I don't know about because Shanks. I know, like people really want Shanks to be in here. We have to keep in mind that like Shanks was, at least from my perception, Shanks was leaving Elbaf when he was already taking care of kids. So I don't think he's going to be an Elbaf. It would be cool, don't get me wrong. Maybe there'll be something with Shanks explained there. Maybe there'll be a little bit of him, but I really think that honestly Oda is saving Shanks for more endgame stuff because of the fact that like it makes more sense for Shanks to have a role to play near the end than the beginning. Not even the beginning, but if we're at like 80% or even 90%, let's say like LBAF is about 91 to 95%. Well, if that's true, then I'm just saying that like from here, we kind of have to understand that like Shanks is going to be probably saved for the end because I think Oda would really like to do something where it's like he wants to keep Shanks for that full circle effect. We started off with Shanks and Luffy, we're going to end with Shanks and Luffy. And that's why even things like Blackbeard being the fight after Shanks doesn't really make sense to me because you have to think that Shanks really has sat here and pretty much like given Luffy his inspiration to do all this in the first place. He's the one who gave him the straw hat. So for us to see like these things wrap up or even start to have a wrap up within Elbaf, it would be nice, but I'm not betting on it. I'm thinking that with the end of One Piece comes like Shanks trying to potentially challenge Luffy versus us going into Elbaf and then him challenging Luffy. It just seems more full circle, and I think that's what really makes it so like Shanks being one of Oda's favorite characters will end up being more of a like tie-in. You know what I mean? Like I feel like in the end it'll make it so things are a little bit more full circle. And with Oda's story writing and the way he does things, especially how he relates things from the beginning of the series to the end of the series so we can put pieces together and make theories, it would make a lot more sense for him to stick to his storytelling narrative and the way he does things and have Shanks be more towards the end even after Elbaf than in Elbaf even though it's towards the end. But let's keep reading on here. We have Saul and the Books of Ohara. The Void Sentry reveal. That would be cool. Can't even argue about that one. Final Road Poneglyph location. That can definitely happen. The Giant Beasts of Elbaf and the Atom Tree. Well, of course, the Atom Tree's on the island. That would be cool. Enru returns and Uranus reveal. That definitely. I hope they tie together. I think that will be so cool because the tree essentially goes into the sky anyway. So if it's going to be as close to the atmosphere as you can of the planet and potentially get them close to the moon or even like tie those two things together, that would be awesome. Eneru and the moon versus Aruj and the sun, that could be cool. I could see that. I'm banking on Aruj coming through as more of like a who is it like hold on, man, give me 1 second. Trying to think of the crew that helped hold on. Hold on 1 second. Uh Give me 1 second. Sorry, guys. I'm pausing here for a second because I'm trying to make sure that I keep everything in sync and say the right name. There's so many characters in One Piece that sometimes I do get a little lost with who's who. Of course, I've been a fan for 20 years, but for me, guys, I don't like hardcore go into One Piece to the point where, like, like I know every character's name, I know like everything like that. Like, I know what they look like, of course, but like for me, the name, I I don't know. It's just not like something that I actually like go in hardcore on. So of course, as I like explain this stuff to you guys, I'm gonna be looking up references to make sure that I actually say the right thing and not just go into it with like just like kind of generalizing the person or saying who's who without knowing who they actually are. Um, but give me 1 second here. So okay, let's see. Uh, Hold on. All right, Capone. All right, Capone Beige, right? Now, I feel like, and I'm going back to this point about how Rouge in the Sun is a thing, but Capone Beige, when he was pretty much helping Luffy with Whole Cake, I feel like Rouge is going to play more of a role with that if Eneru ends up coming to Elbaf via the moon or if they have to go there. I think the concept of Eneru and the moon and Rouge and the sun is cool, but I feel more like Rouge will probably play a support role to the Straw Hats as they try to either beat Eneru or maybe even just for this arc in general, but most likely for Eneru, that was so they can have Rouge tie himself to the sun god because that's the giant's religion anyways. And then this leads into Ragnarok. Now Ragnarok is interesting to me because we all know that Ragnarok is basically supposed to be like a war. You know what I mean? It's a great battle, and if it's not the final war, which is understandable, it's still a big battle. So because it's a big battle, I see Aruj playing more of a big role here. But then we also have to take into consideration that there's going to be most likely a big battle with Eneru and people on the moon versus anything. It's a big speculation, but I mean I think it's definitely true, and it kind of makes the most sense because again, like the tree goes the farthest up to the atmosphere as possible. It's the potential for the Straw Hats to actually be able to get all the way to the moon, and then on top of that, because we're going there anyways, and the religion pertains to the sun god. I mean, if Aruj comes back, I mean essentially he could basically be a support character for Luffy and the crew anyways, because maybe the religion is so strong with them that they have to fight off Eneru and his belief of the moon and its powers, or something similar. But I definitely feel like the speculation here makes sense. Now let's go a little bit ahead. I don't know exactly how much he stays in Elbaf. Looks like we stay in the Elbaf prediction for a minute, but the main thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go in here and I'm going to actually let him explain more towards the end. So we'll carry on for about 2 minutes, then we're going to hop to the next arc.
Which was the name of a very famous trading post during the times of the Vikings named Burka, which also happens to be the Sky Island.
I'm going to go back about 10 seconds so I can get full context.
Themes of belief and faith, and what does it mean to be a god? And you have Eneru, who's tied in the story previously as having a god complex, who's on the moon right now. The Moon Kingdom is titled Burka, which was the name of a very famous trading post during the times of the Vikings named Burka, which also happens to be the Sky Island in which the Birkins come from. And who is a Birkin? Uruj. And who has some type of relationship that has been teased and foreshadowed time and time again against Eneru? Uruj, who is a character that has an electric attack named after the god of thunder in Norse mythology. Eneru. There's so much stuff here tying Eneru and Aruj and the people of the Sky Kingdom and their worship of the sun god and the giants' worship of the sun god all coming together within the Elbaf story arc. Again,
makes sense.
People think I'm crazy whenever I bring this up, but I really do.
No, he's definitely not crazy. Oda loves his lore and actually pertaining things to real life, things that he's probably studied or looked up. So I think Roger makes perfect sense here when it comes to this theory and trying to, essentially get everything related to each other based on Sky Island and Aruj versus Eneru and everything, and then the mythology with the Vikings and the religion and the belief. I think that's definitely 100% spot on.
Genuinely believe that Uruj and Eneru are going to be returning and showing up during the Elbaf arc. Again, Think about the first island that we saw Aruj at right at the very beginning of the post-time skip. He arrived at the Thunder Island, right? We know that Eneru 8 years ago destroyed Burka. He wiped it out. And we know that Uruj is the fallen mad monk, right? Again, themes of religion, themes of faith. What does he believe in? Do the Birkins also believe in the sun god? Are they allied in some way? There's so much stuff that connects Eneru and Aruj with the Giants of Elbaf. So just keep that in mind. And I have even more evidence for this as we move forward. But I do think this is one massive thing that people are overlooking when it comes to Elbaf that I really do think is going to be important. And that is the return of Uruj and the return of Eneru and what that potentially means for the story. Again, Eneru, the people of the moon, the automatas, it being named Burka, him potentially coming down with the Ark, potentially giving us information about Uranus. We still don't know exactly what is up with Uranus. It's the one big ancient weapon that's still kind of up in the air. Again, no pun intended, considering it's the ancient weapon of the sky. But think about that. The sky people, right? If you're going to have an ancient weapon from the sky, we're probably going to find out about it in some way, or the people that will have some type of knowledge of it would be the people from the sky, Eneru and Uruj, who again, maybe not necessarily Eneru, but a lot of people within Skypiea and potentially the Birkins as well worshipped the sun god, as was talked about in Skypiea. So I do think there's a lot of story connections that could tie to that, and the worship and the beliefs
makes sense,
and the sun god ideas that are going to be proposed during the Elbaf arc. And last but not least, because we are going to get a lot more in depth on the Aruj and Eneru stuff. Last but not least, I want to say, I do believe that Elbaf will lead into Ragnarok, right? The idea of this massive war that will destroy the world. Think about that. Think about what's coming up in the story of One Piece that has been teased, might give you a pretty good idea of what I think the next arc after that is going to be. But I really do think Eneru coming down, Uruj coming down, this massive war with the Giants could potentially lead, especially if we find out the location of the last row poneglyph in Elbaf, will potentially lead directly into final war. But, again.
Okay. We're going to stop there. We're going to kind of go on. He has Uruj's role in Elbaf. Now, we're just going to kind of read through this here. It says, the only Warshin member yet to meet Luffy. The only supernova whose devil fruit has yet to be fully named and detailed. Perfect devil fruit for Elbaf, converts damage into muscle and size. Described as the Mad Monk, would make sense to appear in an arc heavy with religious themes. Aruj is likely a Birkin, would have a grudge against who Eneru destroyed the Sky Island of Burka 8 years ago. P.S. Burka is also the name of the city on the moon that Eneru took over. Potentially an ally of the Straw Hats and the Giants against Eneru, the Automata army, and the coming of Ragnarok, the final war. So he thinks Ragnarok could be the final war. It's possible. I just feel like, I mean, we kind of have to understand here that, like, okay, maybe it will signal the final war. I think that actually kind of makes sense. But, like, the way it seems is, like, that, like, Ragnarok is going to happen in Elbaf. I think, like, whatever happens at the end of Elbaf is probably going to signify, because then, you know, obviously people are going to know where the final road poneglyph is. Everybody wants to compete for that, and then they go from there. But let's also continue on. He looks at that for a little bit. We go into speculation again. Let's see. So we have the two here, Egghead, Elbaf. We're going to continue on a bit more. Now he does another trivia, final war speculation. Now, we're going to go and just read this straight up because, guys, we're hitting about the 45-minute mark, and I kind of want to end this video in the next, like, say, like 7 minutes here. So we say Nefertari Lily. So we see the final war speculation. Nefertari Lily and the Will of D explained. Full Void Sentry flashback. These both make perfect sense, would be cool. Everyone is here, impelled down Breakout 2.0, which makes perfect sense because now if the sea levels are rising and we have Doflamingo especially now talking about trying to get out of the prison because it's going to be submerged anyways, I mean, there's your Breakout right there. Everyone got out because the sea levels are rising and Magellan didn't want to let everybody, you know, basically end up drowning, or the prison go like, submerge. So that makes perfect sense, because basically if people from impelled down are breaking out, essentially that's going to make it so when they do break out, or even if they get out with Magellan's help, he's going to be trying to save them, but some of them are probably going to pull a fast one and probably break out of his control by the time he takes them above the sea level anyways. um, well, I don't want to say above the sea level because it's weird. The prison kind of goes below sea, but then at the same time, it's also above. It's kind of like basically a big pillar that kind of is underneath and on top of the sea. But if it's all submerged, then it's all going to be under the sea in general. But you guys get the point. So we have the Revolutionary Army versus the world government, which would be crazy because then we also get to see Dragon finally show up. Maybe we get some lore with Dragon and Luffy, maybe even a flashback of Dragon's past and how he actually came to have Luffy. We have the final fights against the Admirals and the Marines. We have the final fight against Emo, Gorosei, and Holy Knights. The Straw Hat Grand Fleet's big moment. The ancient weapons are used. Destruction of Mary Joyce and Fishman Island. We have Big Shanks' sacrifice, Law's immortality surgery, and then we have Laugh Tale location revealed. Now, there's like a couple things on this list that I'm just gonna speculate that I kind of feel like are a little bit off. So the things I think are off, I mean, the ancient weapons is kind of fine. I could kind of see that with the final war because it would make sense. You're using the big guns in the big war, so okay. The destruction of Mary Joyce and Fishman Island. See, now that's interesting because that's going to tie right back to the Revolutionary Army versus the world government, where we do see that if Mary Joyce is destroyed, I mean, that would essentially be the revolutionaries coming to Mary Joyce in order to fight the world government, which would kind of make sense. And Fishman Island. Now, the Fishman Island thing is interesting to me because I feel like we're trying to get like a little bit of a tie into the world becoming whole, which it should, but let me just say this. I feel like if Fishman Island was destroyed for any reason, I mean, the only thing that kind of makes sense to me in a weird way is because maybe the Noah ship is finally coming up. I don't know. Maybe that might even happen sooner. Maybe that's even why we got the shot of the mermaid swimming towards the surface of the ocean. Maybe that's starting to happen. I don't know. Same thing with like what is it, the giant finally moving, maybe something along those lines. But at the same time, I feel like Fishman Island being destroyed, unless it happens through one of those events, I really don't see Fishman Island being destroyed. I mean, it could be, but at the same time, like, who's to say that if it was destroyed, I mean, really the purpose of that is probably just going to be for the fishmen to start appearing on the surface more, and then that causes potentially I don't want to say forced, but for the lack of a better word, forced interaction between humans and fishmen, which might lead to them actually coming together versus the separation we've seen so much throughout the series of them being like one race to another. Big Shanks' sacrifice. Now, I will say this. I don't think Shanks is going to sacrifice himself. If he does, I guess, but at the same time, I wouldn't like that because it feels like Shanks is too powerful in order for him to actually sacrifice himself. Now, will he fight Luffy? Yeah. Will he try to get the One Piece? Yeah. But I don't think he's going to sacrifice himself. If anything, I don't even think Shanks is going to die. I think Shanks will probably carry on as an older individual that knows Luffy. If he was to be sacrificed, I would get it, but I just personally don't see Shanks sacrificing himself. I think that in itself is a little bit off because one, again, we know Oda loves Shanks. He literally, like, that's one of his favorite characters. And then even on top of that, Shanks, I think Shanks is too powerful to sacrifice himself versus taking a huge hit and maybe being out of commission. And if that's in the final war and it was versus anybody, it would be Emu versus any other character in the series. But even then, like, I just honestly think that Shanks is not, like, that's not going to happen unless we get some weird thing with, like, the Holy Knights and Shanks, and that from there makes it so, like, maybe he fights his father, and, like, fighting his father causes him to, like, save Luffy or something like that, you know? But, like, that's all speculation based on the fact that, like, we have to see how the Holy Knights even integrate into the story, whether they fight the Straw Hats, the Revolutionary Army, or any other crew, anything like that, right? And then on top of that, like with Shanks coming into the mix, I mean, like, this is why I don't even feel like we'll see Shanks in Elbaf, because if you think about it, if Shanks is supposed to come into the Holy Knights, then why would he come into Elbaf? Because his main role is going to be played, if it was played anywhere, at the Holy Knights, because his father's there. So if that's the case, whether he's good, bad, because people think he's bad a little bit because now he's going for the One Piece, or maybe he set Luffy up. If any of those are the case, then we kind of have to keep Shanks in this final war, which again is closer to the end of One Piece, like we've said with this full circle thing that Oda likes to do, where like I see Shanks coming in here more. It wouldn't be bad if there's lore of Shanks sprinkled into the Elbaf thing, okay, but I just don't think that's going to be the focus for Elbaf, and this part makes more sense with Shanks maybe even fighting against the Holy Knights and everything else, and then maybe going for the One Piece versus having a sacrifice. Because him sacrificing himself, I don't see that. Maybe, but I think Oda's really trying to go and do this thing where Shanks essentially gets as close as he can to the One Piece, and then he has to fight Luffy because in order for him to prove he's a gay pirate, he's going to have to try to actually beat Luffy. Or Luffy's going to actually have to try to beat him, and then maybe from there, I don't want to say Luffy has to kill him, but like he has to at least beat him in order for himself to prove himself, and then go to Laugh Tale. And yeah, because there's going to be a fight to get to the last place of One Piece, you know what I mean? But even then, I just can't see them getting to the One Piece so easily. Like maybe a couple crews get in, maybe they get in together. Who knows? But I don't think like the Straw Hats are just gonna have all this stuff happen, get to the final island, and then just cruise to the One Piece. I think they're gonna have to fight before they get there. I think they're gonna have to fight on the way there, and then I think once they even get there, they're gonna probably have to fight for it because a big theme in One Piece is a lot of the fighting. And once they do that, I think then once that battle's done, I think that's when they will finally find the One Piece. So I don't see Shanks just sacrificing himself because I think he plays a really big piece in the very end of One Piece. Law's immortality surgery. That sounds cool too. I don't really mind if I see that. I know Roger says it's somehow put on Luffy, but I don't think Luffy wants to live forever. And then even on top of that, like maybe it has to do with another character versus Luffy. And if it was done with Luffy, it'd be kind of crazy because essentially Luffy could never die. And if he is the Pirate King and he can never die, I'm not saying that makes him the Pirate King forever, but like I don't know about him being the one to do it. Like I feel like the immortality surgery is a crutch in here where like it's done to someone in order to help somebody, but it's not done to like maybe it could even be Luffy, yeah, but it's not just gonna be done so leisurely to anybody. And if it is Luffy, I don't even think Luffy would want it because I don't think Luffy wants to live forever. That just doesn't seem like it'd be in his character. But if he did, I mean that'd be cool. It would mean that Luffy basically can live on forever. Awesome. But like I wouldn't really be a fan of that. If it happens, cool, but I wouldn't be a fan. The Laugh Tale location revealed, of course, at the end of these crazy battles. That definitely makes sense because then we're going to the actual final part. So that's cool. Now I'm going to do what I did again and kind of go towards the end of his slide here when it comes to the Final War speculation. Again, guys, we're kind of making waves because we are already at the 52-minute mark. I really am trying to make this not too much of a long video for you guys. I'm seeing where we're going with everything. We'll go about 1:15. Let it play from here.
Here. I think we're going to get Dragon and Garling at some point. I think we're going to get Dragon and Emu at some point. I think Luffy and Akainu at some point. Luffy and Emu at some point. Potentially Luffy and Dragon together against somebody. Sabo versus Akainu I think is going to happen at some point. I actually think we can end up seeing Kizaru and
Sabo
Sanji,
versus Akainu is big facts too, by the way.
But I really do think that Kizaru and Sanji
like I know people want Luffy to come in and fight Akainu, would be awesome, but at the same time, like I feel like Sabo has such an important role to play versus Luffy because even though Luffy lost Ace to Akainu in Marineford, it's just the fact that now that Sabo has these powers and can come up and avenge Shanks with the Devil Fruit that like literally was like taken from Ace as he was killed, I just feel like we could definitely see something like that here. And I know he hasn't put it in here too, but I feel like the final war is where the Blackbeard fight's gonna happen for sure because you won't just have everybody on Laugh Tale unless there's like I was saying earlier, a battle on Laugh Tale. So to get the One Piece, on the way to the One Piece, and then at the One Piece, that's what I said, right? So unless Blackbeard is actually in this final war, or unless he actually goes to Laugh Tale and then they battle him there before they get to the One Piece, I feel like Blackbeard is also going to be a thing that we probably get the conclusion of, or beat before we go there. So I could see Blackbeard fitting in here too.
interesting matchup here as well. I could see that happening during this. I think Green Bull is going to be another major fight that's going to come up. I would love to see potentially Momonosuke and Yamato showing up with Pluton taking down Green Bull.
Be cool.
That'd be a cool way to wrap up their story. But I do think there's going to be a Green Bull confrontation. And again, there's going to be a lot of different fights, but we'll speculate more on that a little bit later because that would take up the entirety of the stream. There's going to be lots of encounters, lots of cameos, lots of fights. But at the end of the day, the big important ones, Luffy versus Emu, Sabo versus Akainu, Dragon potentially versus Emu, potentially against Garling, and Shanks having a major sacrifice, and a Yasopp Van Augur fight. I think that's all going to go down. Maybe even Shanks against Blackbeard, I could see happening.
Yeah, Yasopp and Van Augur would be fire.
But really, I could see Shanks holding...
But hold on, before he goes on to that point, Yasopp versus Van Augur, but maybe Van Augur beats Yasopp, thus enabling Usopp to actually be able to beat him. Now that would be fire, because then we could see how Yasopp actually went out of his way to do something selfless for his son, on top of actually, already, like, I guess you could say helping him, but then at the same time, I don't want to say inspiring him to be a pirate, but like at the same time, like it would just be cool to see Yasopp and Usopp actually fight together, and then if Yasopp was to be beaten by Van Augur, Usopp actually come out and pull something crazy out of his bag of tricks and somehow be able to beat Van Augur, because I definitely want to see Usopp beat Van Augur. That is a main battle that I'm actually ready for, and that's because it'll be so sick when we see it.
Off Blackbeard, allowing Buggy and Luffy to make their way to Laugh Tale, Blackbeard overtaking Shanks, being the last remnant, trying to clean up everything after the final war, being that scavenger, picking up devil fruits left and right, feeding them to his crew members and feeding them to random people, right? Picking up what's left, the scraps of the final war, becoming too powerful, having too many devil fruits to overcome. Shanks trying to holding him off for a little bit, but then Blackbeard overtaking him and chasing after Buggy and Luffy. I could see that happening too. So anyway, I've talked about enough. Let's move on to the final arc of the series, what I believe to be the final arc of the final saga, and that is none other than Laugh Tale. Again, this came directly from Oda, right when he made those comments in 2022 about how he estimated 5 more years were left and all this.
Okay, now this quote right here, I just don't believe it, because I feel like we have so much to decompress on, and whether it's done in a little bit or a lot, it's like them finding the One Piece and then it being over. I just don't think that means that we're just going to end up ending the series. I think they'll find the One Piece, and then we get a little bit of clarification on what happens with everybody afterwards, and then we kind of end it. And whether he ends it on a cliffhanger, or it's literally the end, like the to be continued sign at the end of the episode says the end instead of to be continued, like, okay. But at the end of the day, I think we definitely have to at least see something based on what happens after they find the One Piece. Whether it's like, they've done their thing and what they're doing then, or, you know what I mean? You definitely get the point of what I'm saying, but like, there just has to be something after finding the One Piece. It can't just be like, we find it and then it's done. I think that is something that definitely has to happen. If it does, I guess, Oda, in my opinion, dude, I've been watching you for like 20 years plus, and on top of that, dude, you've given me amazing content to watch every weekend of my life, pretty much, and I can't even blame you if you end it how you want, but I just don't see him just getting to the One Piece, and then we just end it. It'll probably be it's found, and then we see some stuff afterwards, and then it ends. Whether that's Luffy's dream after, whether that's, anything. But the main reason I think that makes sense is because in order for Luffy to get his dream, we have to think that he has to be the Pirate King in order to do so. But in order to be the Pirate King, he has to find the One Piece. So the way it goes in order is they find the One Piece, he becomes the Pirate King, and then we see his dream because it's attainable now that he's the Pirate King. At least I would hope so. So if that's the case, then I don't think One Piece is just going to be over when we find the One Piece. I think we will find it, and then things will pretty much start to shut down right after that. And there's no problem with that at all. I just definitely think that that's something. The one thing that I will say that kind of gets me, and I've always thought about this for a while, is manga versus anime. Now, if you think about this, and this is just important to me in general, as a general One Piece fan, especially for 20 years. Now, if we find the One Piece in the manga first, does that mean that we are pretty much just going to do it like how the manga and anime have been doing it, or something of the sorts, where like the One Piece is found in the manga and then in the anime we're still getting there? Or do we somehow make it so they both catch up to each other, and both the anime and manga are literally both posted for the end of the series together, and then we find the One Piece in the anime when we find the manga? Because the only reason that makes sense to me is because, like, essentially everybody that reads the anime, once we find the One Piece, no matter what it is or how we find it, I feel like there's going to be such a massive holdback on social media or whatever in general for people not to at least explain or show or tell what the One Piece is when they've read it in the manga versus they've seen it in the anime. So that's what makes me wonder about that, because that is definitely going to be a thing where, like, we're either going to get one or the other, or Oda's going to have to pull a miracle and make both like sync up together and then both happen at the same time. But that's just my speculation when it comes to manga versus anime. Let's continue on, because guys, we are almost at the hour mark. I'm going to go into a speculation based on Laugh Tale, and we are just going to kind of read the bullet points here. Now, when it comes to speculation on Laugh Tale, we have the final race for the One Piece. We have Luffy and Roger's dream revealed. Um, we have all remaining lures revealed. Blackbeard, Zebek, God Valley, Void Century, etc. I feel like all that's going to be wrapped up before we even get there. I feel like all the lore that we wanted to know is probably going to be wrapped up, and then we're just going to have the general present of what's going on in order to find the One Piece. If we got any lore, it would just be Roger finding it, and maybe that somehow relates to Luffy, like, I don't know, something like that of the sorts, or maybe what the One Piece was. Like, there's not going to be too much lore because we're going to be getting towards the end. And if we do find out a lot about if we do find out about a lot of things, then I think that in the end we're probably going to more find out about what the One Piece was, who made it, and then what it means versus like anything else. I think Blackbeard will already be solved. God Valley will already be solved. The Void Century will definitely already be solved. The next bullet point, though, reads Straw Hats versus Blackbeard versus Cross Guild. It's a potential, but then again, keep in mind, this is what I was saying about how, like, there's going to be a battle to the One Piece, on the way to the One Piece, and then when we get to the One Piece. I just have to say, maybe the Cross Guild makes sense since Buggy has such a strong inclining for it, but I would be more inclined to believe that Blackbeard, he could be a potential candidate for this, because he is pretty strong and he kind of has been going for it too. But this list, I think, makes more sense with the picture he's showing, where it's Buggy, Blackbeard, Shanks, and Luffy. And don't get me wrong, it'll be cool, but we kind of have to narrow it down at some point. So in my opinion, the final two are probably going to be Luffy and then I'd say Shanks. And when it comes to Blackbeard and Buggy, they're probably going to be villains that each one fights. Like, I could see Shanks versus Buggy. I don't know how that'll work out or what that'll play out like, because that'll be crazy. Not even like in terms of epic, just like wild, the Buggy's even going to really try to fight Shanks. Kind of like an Usopp versus Luffy kind of moment there. And then we have Blackbeard versus Luffy, which I think makes sense because he's more responsible for Ace's death, which means Luffy, instead of fighting Akai Inu, actually goes to fight Blackbeard because he caused Ace to actually die. So I see those two matching up. And then in the end, it's most likely going to be Luffy versus Shanks, because again, then Oda gets that perfect full circle that he always does in One Piece, and literally will go on to actually make it so Luffy has to prove that he's a great pirate to Shanks by beating him, then attaining the One Piece, thus truly confirming to Shanks, ever since he was told as a kid, that he can give the pirate hat back when he's become a great pirate, either before or after the battle of finding the One Piece, will literally just full circle it. You know what I mean? And I just think that's going to be something that will definitely happen. And I think if and just keep, okay, this kind of just popped in my mind. Keep this in mind. If Luffy is to find the One Piece and give the Straw Hat back to Shanks, wouldn't it be sick if somehow Shanks is not feeling well or is beaten, and, like, you know, he's sitting like this or something, and Luffy walks up and literally just gives him the Straw Hat just the same way that Shanks gave it to him when he was a kid? It wouldn't, like, be demoralizing for Shanks. It would be more of a reverse thing where you had Shanks giving Luffy the hat, like, pretty much like this, like putting it on his head, right? And then you have Luffy giving the hat back to Shanks, putting it on his head when he goes to find the One Piece. And I think that in itself would be a perfect full circle moment, because they switch sides, the hat is given back, and literally Luffy is now a great pirate and is about to basically get the One Piece. And then, all right, I just read a little bit more of this list. We're just going to continue on real quick. Luffy versus Blackbeard, Zoro versus Mihawk. I guess I feel like Zoro versus Mihawk would happen a little bit sooner, but like the Luffy versus Blackbeard part ties into when Shanks fights Buggy, and maybe Mihawk breaks away from Buggy and then goes with Shanks, and then that makes it so Zoro ends up fighting Mihawk once Luffy fights Shanks, something of the sort, right? I think that could make sense, but there'll be breakaways where things start to like funnel together based on who's more powerful and who makes more sense finding this treasure in the end. Buggy becomes the Pirate King for sure, for sure. You know, Luffy, 20 years. Nope, it was Buggy all along, y'all. Buggy all along. All right, and then we're gonna continue on. The One Piece is revealed now. Of course, that's what's gonna happen because we've gotten to Laugh Tale. We see the One Piece. We find out what it is, and you know, all is over. But that definitely makes sense to me. Let me just see what Roger has left in this video. I'm just gonna kind of scroll a little bit forward. It looks like it's more just Sanji versus Crocodile. I mean, that makes sense. I wouldn't be opposed to the Sanji versus Crocodile thing. Epilogue. Oh, well, this was his guess on what happens after. You guys can still definitely again check out Roger's video if you want to see the epilogue. For me, I'm gonna leave a link down below if you guys want to check out his video and actually see his thoughts. This is again just me reacting to his opinions and things that he's put out through this video, and kind of letting you guys know as a 20-year One Piece fan what I think will personally happen. But from there, I mean, really, Q&A. Let's see here. Hold on. So I'm just gonna go into the Q&A section.
But thank you for sticking with me. I know there was a lot of information that I threw at you. You probably have a lot of questions. Please, if you have any questions or comments on anything that I said, let me know down in the comments section below. Share with me your theories. Share with me your ideas.
Okay. So that's what that is. Final word speculation again.
I didn't even bring that up, but I do think like that's also an interesting play on it, of the idea that like Sanji would never hit a woman, and then you find out after the fight, like via Ivankov or something, that actually like Crocodile was a girl the whole time, and Sanji's like, no, well, you know, it would be
Okay. All right. So yeah, we're just gonna go. I'm just gonna let this video wrap up real quick. We obviously have the Sanji versus Crocodile slide here. I have no qualms with that at all. I think that could be cool. But in general, I think with that we kind of are at the end of the video. Let's see here. I'm just gonna go back real quick, and I'm gonna let Roger kind of wrap up his explanation on this slide. So that's just because Laugh Tale was his last slide. I think we skipped the one for the final war, but we are gonna see what he says just here about the end, probably the last 2 or 3 points of the Laugh Tale speculation.
Awesome fight. We could potentially see Weevil. We could potentially see Doflamingo. There's any number of things that could happen. So we could speculate further. I'm not going to dive into it right now. The important ones: Luffy versus Blackbeard, Zoro versus Mihawk, Sanji versus Crocodile, Usopp versus Van Augur, Frankie versus Burgess, Doc Q versus Chopper. Those are locks to me. I cannot be convinced otherwise. And then, of course, the Looney Tunes fight between Buggy and Luffy that I think is going to happen at the very beginning of Laugh Tale, that will then allow Buggy to do his own thing during the arc, to slink off and find the One Piece first and become the Pirate King. Okay, so there you go.
All right, he just casually slipped that in there. First off, all right, I get the Buggy being the Pirate King is the biggest joke ever, but like the way he just casually slid it in there, I'm done, dude. No, but okay. I know everybody. I know. All right.
Now, last but not least, the final thing, Laugh Tale. Of course, the series ends when we find the One Piece. When we find the One Piece, not when Buggy finds it, when Luffy and the crew find the One Piece. When they find the One Piece, the series ends. After the fight with Blackbeard, after the fight with the Cross Guild, after everything, they finally get to the One Piece, and we get the major reveal, and that right there is the end of the story. That's it. Maybe. We're going to keep going a little bit later. But before we keep going, quick thing I want to do.
Alright, so guys, we are going to end the video there. Again, I will leave the link in the description below. Make sure you follow and like Rogersbase right here. Be sure to subscribe to his channel too. Feel free to subscribe to me as well. Again, I am a new YouTuber. We're just kind of building up, man. I mean, like, I'm just gonna keep posting videos till something sticks. But we have a lot more content that we want to react to. We have a lot more that we actually have to get set up in terms of everything that we're trying to get this channel to be. And yeah, guys, I mean, this was definitely fun. I definitely just wanted to throw in my thoughts as a 20-year One Piece fan because I think it's interesting seeing people that have come in maybe in the mid like 10 to 15 year range of One Piece and then kind of like, giving their predictions and everything. They're definitely spot on. Some of them are interesting. I definitely agree with a lot of them. But at the same time, I just want to say that I just kind of have my own thoughts on how One Piece will end because, again, I've watched this series ever since I was like literally 5 years old. I'm 29 now. And that makes it so for me, this is very important because I actually want to give you guys my insight on how I think the One Piece will end. With Rogersbase's review and speculation, I definitely think that it's pretty spot on. There are some things I just think are a little off, but I'd say in general a lot of things are actually pretty accurate in terms of what's going to happen. But I also do keep always in mind that Oda does write One Piece because he loves it and also it's his series. So at the end of the day, if any of these things didn't happen, I would at the end of the day still be just as much of a fan no matter what. I would hope that we don't rush it. I don't want it to just end fast because he wants it to go through a timeline. There's just so much to One Piece that I mean, we all love it, we all enjoy it, we all want to see how it ends. We all tune in every week whenever we can and whenever there's not a break. So if you share that love for One Piece, I would hope that you guys feel the same. But yeah, guys, this was definitely an awesome video reaction. It's definitely different doing this versus going on to, do the chapter so far. We'll probably do more One Piece related content coming up. I even want to react to some other videos coming up here, but at the same time, we're kind of just like working things out, seeing what we want to react to, getting videos up. So if you guys definitely enjoyed the video, again, please be sure to like, comment, subscribe. It would be much appreciated. It helps the channel, helps us grow, helps us get into the algorithm. And yeah, that's pretty much it for now, guys. So if you ended up liking this video, thank you for coming, and I hope you have a good one. See ya.